Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order because we do have a quorum, but I will still proceed with a roll call. Mo, would you like to proceed?
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Reed is excused. Our Curry is excused. Commissioner Maya?
Here.
Commissioner Grabman is excused. Vice Chair Glazier?
Here.
And Chair Houghton.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Hastert, are there any changes to the agenda?
Chair Houghton, no changes to the agenda.
All righto, thank you. Okay, the second item on our agenda is on number 2 here, that on Friday, October 13th, 2023, the Airport Commission Secretary, Ms. Mo Graham, posted the agenda on the bulletin board at the airport administration. The next section of our agenda is actually my favorite because I always like to hear public comment. This is how we grow and this is how we find solutions to potential problems. Mo, is there any public speaker comment slips been signed? It appears not. Okay. We're fortunate to have both of our city council members present today. We have council member Eric Friedman from Santa Barbara, and we have council member James Carrico from Goleta. Gentlemen, do you have any public comments today? Tonight?
Thank you, Chair Houghton. Just a brief item, and then Director Hastert will get into more of what the city has been doing, but in his report. But the council this past week, I think, approved $5 million towards lights, signage, and markings upgrades at the airport. So that was approved, and that will be going forward. So it'll be a big improvement, and that's all I got tonight.
Very good. It's money that will be spent well here.
Just a couple quick announcements from me. One, the city of Goleta's housing element was accepted by the state. That will potentially have impacts in the future on the airport in terms of growth happening in and around the airport area. The other is wanted to kind of bookmark for you. October 30th, the city is going to be having a rather significant meeting to talk about future capital projects and in particular funding. The two projects to really keep an eye on for the airport would be the Eckwell Fowler extension project, which involves roundabouts on either side of the 217 and Hollister, and extending Eckwell Road all the way to Fairview to the edge of the airport. And then in particular, the other project would be the Hollister interim striping project, which would repave Hollister Avenue between Kinman Avenue and Fairview, and would change the electrical timing to make for more efficient circulation and importantly add bike lanes, buffered bike lanes on both sides of Hollister Avenue, and potentially adding some parking as well, angled parking, creating more of a sense of place, more of a downtown feel to Old Town Goleta. So just a couple things to kind of keep an eye on for the future. And then I did receive a couple of emails from constituents just talking about the 5 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. flights, and just, asking if there's anything the airport can do when it comes to the timing of those flights or the paths for those flights. So I just wanted to pass along that feedback. I know you all work very hard to try and mitigate the impacts as much as you can. Thank you.
Thank you, council members Carrico and Friedman. Those 5:15, 5:30 flights also go over Commissioner Maya's and my homes. We hear them too. I'd like to call on Director Hastert for his airport director report.
Thank you, Chair Houghton. There's a couple of reports in the packet for your pleasure, and I have ability to answer any questions you have on those. Just a quick note, John Feldhans, our acting properties manager, gave me the number on September 22nd. We had our peak passenger throughput day with TSA of 2,793 passengers. So don't know if there was any rescreening, if somebody left and came back or not, but fairly impressive number. Andrew was saying in the past it was right around 2,100, I think, was our are big highs, and we're averaging 22 or 23 right now almost every day. So.
Boy.
So in no particular order, I have quite a few things on here. One of them is just thanking you for being flexible on the meeting date coming up to take 2 different months' meetings into one. Worked very well for my schedule with a planned trip to meet with Delta Airlines, which I'll talk about in just a second, and some other things going on. Second is you may have noticed that we have been short a properties manager for a little while, and I can report tonight that Tony Haas has accepted a position at another airport. And so we will continue on with John Feldhans as our acting properties managers for now, and then look to have a permanent replacement with hopefully John applying for that as well. He's been doing a very good job for us. Delta Airlines announcement. I think we haven't had a meeting since that day that it was announced, and so we were very happy to let the commission know that Delta Airlines has announced service starting in June of next year, both to Salt Lake City and to Atlanta. The Atlanta actually was a little surprising to us at first, but definitely a very good connection, busiest airport in the world, connections international and on the East Coast. With that, a positive side of that related to noise is they're using the Airbus A220 airplane, which is a newer airplane, very efficient, quieter, so it's not silent, but it should help with that situation. It does provide some potential challenges for us in the future with that aircraft because it is a very long aircraft, so it might put us into the next aircraft rescue firefighting index level. We currently have the equipment to be able to handle that, so it shouldn't be any major changes, but we're definitely looking into our backup trucks as being much more needed and making sure that we can meet that requirement for the foreseeable future. One of the things related to noise that people don't see is we do champion good approaches here at the airport and working with the FAA to try to make things better. The flip side of that is we also work with the FAA to try to make sure that they don't make things worse. And so they presented several approaches to us coming into runway 25 that were the worst approaches I've ever seen. 4 different options, all of them over heavily populated areas. And in working with them, showing them the proprietary approaches we have with the airlines, showing them our noise abatement procedures, and talking to them about the community, we just received an email confirmation that they have scrapped that plan to update those approaches. So we hope that they will move forward with some better updates in the future, but at least right now it's not getting worse. As I mentioned, the city of Santa Barbara responded back to the city of Goleta with a response to the noise letter. A part of that is working to establish a noise working group. I had hoped that by the time we sat down for this meeting, I would tell you that we've kicked that process off. We're still waiting to meet with the city of Goleta. Unfortunately, there's been some staffing issues with trying to get everybody involved at the right place at the right time. But in the meantime, Greg Goodsell, our operations supervisor who handles the noise program, and I have been meeting with a lot of the constituents in the area, having one-on-one meetings with them, as well as we also supported Laura Capps, Supervisor Laura Capps at the county in meeting with some of their constituents. And so I think we are definitely on the right path, and we just need to get past that hurdle of finding out how we're going to set up who is going to be on the committee as far as neighborhood representation. I will say we had a booth at the Lemon Festival, and that was a very good event, and really enjoyed being out there with the community. And we had a handful of people that came to talk about noise. All but one were very respectful in trying to get more information, and generated some interest to potentially serve on that committee. So it was a good event for us. Also attended the Association of California Airports conference and participated on a panel since the last meeting. They are aligning now with the California Airports Council, so it's 2 different groups, very similar missions. California Airports Council is focused primarily on commercial service airports. Association of California Airports is focused mostly on general aviation airports or smaller commercial service airports that still have a large general aviation component. So those two groups are merging together and really trying to propose legislation to help out airports. And within the last month, they've actually been very successful with two different pieces of legislation. One of them surrounds Turo. I don't know if you've heard of Turo. It's a car sharing app. And they don't currently have a permit at Santa Barbara Airport to do business, but they are using our parking lot and exchanging cars, and we don't get that fees that we normally would receive off of the rental car transactions, say with Enterprise or Avis, Hertz, Budget, all of those. So they are now required to have a permit with any airport that they operate out of within 1 year. We've actually already been in talks with them, so that will help with additional revenue source. And then there was a lengthy process that airports and other government agencies have to go through for surplus lands. And the interpretation was even lands that come off of a lease that you're looking to release again, you have to go through, and it's really focused around housing. And so because we can't have housing right next to the airport, there was legislation that passed that exempted airports from having to go through that process, which was a very good thing. Within the past couple of days, the EPA has actually issued an endangerment finding now for 100 low lead, which is the aviation fuel that we use for the small single-engine piston type aircraft and some twins as well. This is something that we've seen coming for quite a while. The FAA has been working on a replacement with several different providers of fuel doing testing. There is not a drop-in replacement yet, but they are getting close. So the EPA is working closely with the FAA on that issue. I expect that at some point, probably starting in other communities in the Bay Area, but working its way down here, we're going to hear a lot of community input about 100 low lead and what does that mean for me, and when are you getting rid of it. We currently have to provide it per our grant assurances because we do have aircraft that come in and out of the airport that require that use. So hopefully the FAA and EPA can get all that testing done, and we will have a drop-in replacement soon. Happy to report that Andrew and his facilities team has done a lot of work over in the terminal, and I think for the first time in quite a while, every single jet bridge, escalator, elevator is all working with HVAC working in all of them as well. So thank you, Andrew, for your work on keeping that all up and running. Just give a really quick update. We have a proposed crosswalk going in, and Councilmember Friedman has been working with a couple of community members that had a lot of concern about the crosswalk going from the MTD stop across the street into the terminal. That project continues to move forward. It's unfortunately going a little bit slow because you have to bid out the project, things like that, but it is still moving forward. Just a couple more. For those of you that have been near the terminal lately, you may have noticed that Hangar 5 is completely gone now. It's been moved just a few blocks away to be repurposed into a 2-story office building. So that has also allowed our Southfield project to continue. So you will see some more remain overnight spots for airlines as well as rental car parking coming online fairly quickly. And the last thing that doesn't directly affect the commission or the airport, but just so you're aware, our city administrator has announced her retirement. So there will be a process to go through for the city council to be looking for a replacement.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions on Director Hastert's report? Commissioner Maya.
I have a couple questions and comments. Regarding the Delta flights, that's exciting news. I saw that that Atlanta connection, which is really incredible for a small airport on the West Coast to get a connection to Atlanta. So do you have any indication from them at this time what the timing of those flights might be as far as early morning or late night?
The timing was in the press release. Angie, do you have that information right with you?
Yeah, the Atlanta flight is like a 7 or 7:30. There's going to be an early morning Salt Lake City and then an afternoon.
Are any of them before 6 a.m. or after
I
midnight?
think one of the, not after midnight.
No.
And then I believe one of the Salt Lake Cities is pretty early. It might be an earlier than 6:30.
I seem to recall 6:30, but
Okay.
I could be off on that. I can get you the definite information afterwards.
Okay, great. And then the new approaches that you said the FAA scrapped, are they looking to add additional instrument approaches, or are these visual approaches for noise abatement?
So it's not the visual approaches that we've been trying to work with them on. This would have been a GPS approach into runway 25, an upgraded GPS approach. Upgraded maybe as far as minimums to get in, but a downgrade as far as what it does to the community.
I see. It would replace the current VOR GPS runway 25 approach?
They didn't say exactly what it's
Yeah.
replacing, but that would be my guess.
Yeah, okay. And then regarding the fuel and 100 low lead avgas, is there any inclination to investigate exploring an additional tank to support 91 octane? Is it 91 UL, I think they call it?
So everything is changing so quickly in that environment. They have the 91 UL, that same company, I think it's Swift Fuels,
Yeah.
is coming out with their, it's like 110R or something like that, that's supposed to be the drop-in replacement that I think ultimately that is where it's going to be. There's another one made by GAMI that apparently currently meets all of the requirements, but it doesn't have their ATSM designation, and there's a lot of controversy around that right now. So I think there's just so many unknowns right now, I wouldn't make a recommendation for any one of those. The airport in Watsonville put in the 92 UL tank with Swift Fuels, and one, because of the cost of the fuel, it's a little bit higher than normal avgas, and the requirement to still have 100 low lead on the field. They have not seen very good throughput of the 92 UL because it's more expensive and it doesn't give you any extra performance or anything like that. So until the FAA actually allows us to not provide 100 low lead anymore, those other options aren't that feasible until there is a true drop-in replacement.
Okay, great. And my last comment was thank you for the upgraded HVAC at the airport. I noticed it the other night when I came in. It was nice and cold coming through the jetway.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments? Well, I've got a comment regarding Delta. I was in Europe when Angie texted me a nice little picture, welcome back, Delta, and it was very exciting because we had recently come through Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, and I remembered my last flight in Salt Lake City. There is this flight from Salt Lake City to Amsterdam Schiphol Airport at 10:30 in the morning, which means Santa Barbarans can take that first flight of the day to Salt Lake City and connect to Amsterdam. If they're late risers, they can take the second flight to Salt Lake City and connect to Paris Charles de Gaulle at 3:30 in the afternoon. This just really opens up our community for more efficient travel. It's one of the reasons over 5 years ago I wanted to join the commission. I wanted to improve commercial airline service in Santa Barbara. And boy, have we improved commercial airline service. It's quite remarkable, and my hat's off to staff for bringing Delta back. It's a wonderful thing.
Chair Houghton,
Thank you, Angie.
Chair Houghton, if I might interrupt for just a second, Andrew was able to pull up the release with the actual times. So the Delta Atlanta departure departs at 7:25 a.m., arriving at 2:55 p.m. in Atlanta. And then the Salt Lake City, the first flight is 6 a.m., arriving at 8:55 a.m. Second flight is at 1:20 p.m., arriving at 4:15 p.m. And then the arrivals departing Atlanta at 7:23 p.m., arriving here at 8:55. And then the Salt Lake City's 11:15 a.m., arriving at 12:18 in the afternoon, and 10:45 p.m., arriving here at 11:51.
Oh, very good. Guess you're going to have to take that early flight for Charles de Gaulle after all. So, regarding the working with principal regulator, the FAA, as I learned many years ago in my industry working with the FDA, a pound of prevention is worth an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I mean, congratulations on persuading them to our point of view. It would be really hard if those routes changed and you had to go back and see if we couldn't reverse that decision. So it's, again, another example of great staff work. So we appreciate your efforts.
Chair Houghton, Councilmember Friedman has a comment.
Yes. Council member?
Thanks. I just had just wanted to add on to the report on the city administrator, since I know it affects all operations. So the timing is the recruitment's about to begin. We hired a firm that we've used in the past, and so the recruitment will be open fairly soon, and then we'll go through a process. And most likely we'll have an interim city administrator for the first part of next year, 24, and then hopefully in the spring, that's kind of the tentative timelines that we could make a permanent hire. So that'll be going in through the first quarter of next year, probably.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Friedman. Okay, Mo, do we have any request to speak forms from the public? Okay, and then we will move on. The next item on the agenda is and falls into the consent calendar, and there are 4 items on this: integrated pest management report, minutes, lease amendment for Easy Live Transportation, and a lease assignment for Amogen LLC. Do the commissioners have any questions or clarifications on the consent calendar items? Okay. Mo, is there any request to speak forms from the public on the consent calendar? Okay. Okay. No, we're running ahead of time here. Phil? Yes. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, sorry I walked in a little late. Just found out about the meeting. Anyway, I live at 945 Ward Drive, Rancho Goleta. And, you know, I'm a big airport fan. I use it. I love it. I just here just to say the 2 flights before 5:30 a.m. fly. It feels like 50 feet over my house.
Right.
Shakes, wakes me up. You fall asleep. The next flight 10 minutes later takes off, and sometimes you can't, you just can't fall back to sleep. And it's not terrible on weekdays. I don't love it, but weekends, Sunday mornings,
Right.
it's really, really tough. And, it didn't used to be that way. It's a new addition. I know all my, neighbors hate it. They don't know really what to do about it. So there's this simmering frustration, but nobody comes to the meeting. There's a little talk at our board meetings. So I'm just here to convey how I feel and how my neighbors feel. It's
Thank
really,
you.
really bad.
Thank you. These public comments were for the consent calendar, but since you missed the beginning
I
of
know.
the public comment,
I missed
you're
it.
excused. It's okay.
Thank
We
you.
we hear you. We're very conscious of this. In fact, Director Hastert and I were talking about the arrival of the A300-200 and how, because of that airplane, noise is going to be reduced significantly. And it's nice to see that they're not leaving at 5:15 in the morning. So it's a competitive world out there, and these airlines compete with one another. Nobody wants to take a 5:15 flight.
Right.
But thank you.
Yeah, and then I'm always thinking, how the city has all these noise regulations on leaf blowers, things like that. You can't start on weekends before a certain time. Then all of a sudden, the airport can do whatever it wants at any hour, and it just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, we're working on it.
I know you are. Thank you. Just
Thank
wanted
you.
to say it out loud.
Chair Houghton,
Thank you.
if I might also add, the noise committee that I mentioned earlier, we will have representatives from the different neighborhoods. So if you want to give your information, if you wanted to participate in that, happy to meet with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners for a motion on the consent calendar. Do I have a volunteer?
Motion to approve
Um,
the consent
mm,
calendar as submitted.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you very much. It has passed. Oh, we need a full vote, sorry. Commissioners?
Only me left, so I vote yes.
Asking that approval of the consent calendar. Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you very much. Keeping me in line here. Okay, we're moving to administrative reports. I'd like to call on Airport Director Hastert again to provide a report on the fiscal year 2023 fourth quarter.
Thank you. We actually have Jonathan Abad is going to present the information to you.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair Houghton and Commission members. I'm Jonathan Abad, Business Manager for the airport, and I'm here to present the fiscal year 2023 fourth quarter financial report. which ends in June 2023. Overall, the airline passenger counts increased 13.9% over last fiscal year to end record 1,278,224 passengers for fiscal 2023. That's actually it's about 48% increase in passengers since before COVID in fiscal 2019. Just give a little context, when we had 861,000 passengers back then. And so the lease revenues are up nearly about $3 million, or 13% over the last fiscal year. And last fiscal year, we received the last of the COVID relief, about $6 million, you'll see there, in which in fiscal 23, we're not expected to receive any more. But that's why we ended fiscal 23 about 10% less in revenues than last fiscal year. But we did end the fiscal year at just about 0.5% over budget. So we did pretty good in projecting that. And most of the airport revenues are from leases, and about $26.7 million worth of lease revenues there. Revenues from terminal up 25%. From commercial aviation up about 17%. Commercial industrial up 1%, and non-commercial aviation just slightly down at 1%. Overall, leases up 13% over last fiscal year. Over the past 5 years, lease revenues are up $6.5 million, about 32% to $26.7 million. Let's see here, right there. And then the portion of the terminal and the commercial air revenue combined, that makes up about 62% of overall lease revenues. And that grew over 43% from the 57% share back in 2019 to the 62% share now. And combined, the commercial industrial and non-commercial aviation used to be at 43% of overall leases. Now it's down to 38% because it only grew at about 17% over that 5-year period. And now highlighting some of the revenues with some pretty good growth. Start off with parking, which grew about $1.2 million over last year. That's 25%. Rental car revenues up about $500,000, 19% over last year. Terminal restaurants and gift shops, concessions up about $200,000. That's up 58%. Ground transportation up about $189,000, 55%. It's pretty big. Commercial air fuel flowage fee up about $100,000 or 36%. And advertising almost tripled. That's thanks to our new partnership with Fuse. That's we've been with for over a year now. Total expenses ended under budget at 91.8% of fiscal 23 budget. That's almost 10% over how we ended last year, though. Now, from the $2.5 million in deficit, in deficit, you see right there, and $1.3 million in encumbrances rolled and carryovers into fiscal 2024. We project about a $3.8 million use of reserve at the end of fiscal 23, leaving an estimated $9.1 million in reserve balance, with about $1 million of that above policy. And the estimated policy reserves of about $8 million. Includes 10% for contingency, 15% for disaster, and a capital reserve of about 5% of the capital value. And more about the $1.3 million encumbrances, I just want to kind of explain a little bit more. 740,000 of that are purchase orders and contracts that hasn't been completed, but it's already been budgeted. So through a resolution, when we adopt the budget, it allows us to carry over those or roll forward those encumbrances. Same with capital and special projects that are budgeted but haven't been encumbered. There's a separate resolution that allows us to carry over and continue those budgeted items. So those have already been counted into the reserve calculation. And I guess that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Bod. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Glazer?
Jonathan, thank you so much for your presentation and for explaining some of those things that I was curious about. So thank you for your attention on that. Just on those special projects, is that 1.3 million inclusive of that number, and then that'll be rolled over until next year? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it rolls over into fiscal 2024.
Okay.
There are special projects like PFAS, mediation, things like that.
Okay. Perfect. And then also, are there any contingent liabilities such as grants that may come with milestones or construction dates or anything that would cause the airport to have to repay those if those milestones were not met in the future?
Good question. I'm not aware of any grants that we may not fulfill any requirements of at this time, so we're in good standing. I do want to add that there is one remaining portion of the ARPA grant, which is for concessions. We actually just recently have our plan approved for that, so the credits should be coming out next billing period on those. And I think that's the last of the COVID-related grants that we have yet to, actually we've just already received, so.
And how much would that be remaining?
It's about $437,000, somewhere in there. And again, it's just going to get passed through to the concessions.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
A question on the terminal revenue, going from 6.1 million in 2019 to 10.69 in 2023. So what is that increase composed of? Is that rate increases or additional space that was leased or additional tenants in the same space?
That's a good question. On the terminal, actually the largest part of the terminal revenue that grew was parking.
Okay.
Parking, actually, let me see here. At one point, just looking at from 22 to 23, you see a 25% growth there. I don't have the 5-year figure, but it's now our single biggest source of revenue for the airport, parking.
Okay.
At
So it's
5.9 million.
not exactly the terminal. It's
Yeah, and that also includes the rental cars.
Okay.
And the concessions, a smaller part of the revenue, but parking, rental cars
Okay.
makes up the biggest part.
I guess I wouldn't have expected parking to fall under lease revenue, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We contract with the
I see. Okay.
reef management. So,
Okay, great. Just one other, in the weeds question, I suppose. How do you define your item, 55 transfers?
oh, the transfers, those are, majority of that would be the transfers out to our capital programs. So we have a list of capital that we
Okay.
approved in the budget, and we appropriate it out of the operating fund. to
Okay, so it's
capital.
your transfers to the capital reserve or whatever,
Yeah.
capital pool.
So
Okay.
although we didn't go over to capital, all the appropriations for that's covered in the operation through the transfer.
Okay.
And
so-
Commissioner Miller, we actually had expected to try to bring the capital program at the same time, but that will be at the next meeting as well.
Okay, so are there, does that include transfers to like the operating reserve? Or is this just capital transfers?
No, the operating reserve is it grows by, you know, the net of our surplus deficit, and we kind of take off the carryovers just to be a little more accurate. So it's just, it falls off of the net, and that's how the reserves get affected.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? I have one question. I see under your fiscal year 2023 lease revenues, you break out commercial aviation and then commercial industrial. Can you explain those two items, what the difference is?
Commercial aviation and non.
And commercial industrial is,
Oh, yes. Commercial industrial are all our buildings, includes the 6100 and various tenants outside of the airfield.
okay.
And then non-commercial aviation, of course, mainly comes through the FBOs, the general aviation revenues.
Okay. So the commercial industrial could just be our lease tenants, basically.
That's
Got
it,
it. Okay.
yes.
Thank you. All right.
I have one, just
Commissioner Maya?
a clarification on, I guess I'm trying to determine how much of the revenue increase is due to increased usage of the airport and its facilities versus how much is due to increase in costs, or either what we're charging our tenants or what we're charging direct to the consumers.
Yeah.
Is that hard to determine?
Actually, well, it's actually, if you look at like the growth in passenger, is fairly consistent with the overall growth of the terminal revenue. Like for the commercial aviation, the rent that we charge the airlines actually barely grew, but the landing fees have significantly gone up because we have larger, heavier planes carrying a lot more people. And again, with the Southwest effect, we're getting a lot more people from outside of the city. Parking, so that's why you see the parking grows significantly. And then we have the concessions, they use more. So as far as like comparing how much we're charging and how much the usage, I would say most of it is the usage, because the increases isn't really that much.
Then my last question would be regarding salaries and benefits, where we came in at 98.27%. Is that primarily due to FTEs not filled?
Vacancies, yes. Primarily, we have some vacancies. We did have overhires too, but yeah, in the early part of the fiscal year, we had a lot of vacancies, but towards like the second quarter on, we've filled them. And of course, we had some vacancies after that, but we've also had some overhires. But so overall, we came in pretty close to.
Good. It's
the
good to see
budget
that most of these positions have been filled now,
Yeah.
too. So.
And also there was also overtime that offset some of the vacant positions. So
Very good. Commissioners, any additional questions? Okay. Are there any additional requests to speak forms from the public? Okay. This does not require a vote. If there are not any more discussions on this topic, we'll move on. And we're going to adjourn the meeting. I want to remind people that the next commission meeting is a special meeting scheduled for November 29 at 6 p.m. This is in lieu of the November and December meetings that have been canceled. So again, one more meeting for this year, and that's November 29. It is 6:40 p.m., and I am adjourning the meeting. Thank you.